Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being with us. This is our final presentation. We've had three great presentations on Middle Eastern countries, and we're looking forward to tonight with Gamal. And we've learned a lot about Oman, about Qatar, and about Saudi Arabia, and tonight is Yemen. And a very important country, and one, of course, has been in the news and for some tragic reasons. But Gamal will take us through a little history of the country and bring us to today, and we'll have a conversation together. He's eager for that, so be thinking about your questions for him. You've been great this whole series, terrific questions, very thoughtful and very civil. Thank you all for that. And just remember, we're looking for questions and not a lengthy personal treatise about the Middle East, and you've been good about that too, so thank you. We want to get as many questions in as possible. I'm Michael Van Dennen. I'm the director of the World Affairs Council of Western Michigan with my colleague Erica Kubik and Emily Smith. We're grateful that you're here. Thanks again to Sound Off Signal. I know Tom's here again tonight. Thank you for him and his company, and they have helped us put on this series. Thanks also to the Seidman School for being such a great host, and to the Middle East Studies program at Grand Valley State University. We're grateful for you all. The council is supported by 50 local businesses in all of our colleges and universities, and they help us bring these program to you, so we're very grateful to them. Kathy Dopp, where's Kathy today? There she is. Kathy will be hosting a talk back. If you'd like to continue the conversation about Yemen, about the Middle East after the program is done tonight, Kathy's going to be at New Holland Brewery. And she's told me there's been a handful of people that come out for that conversation. They've had some lively discussion. They continue the conversation. So New Holland Brewery, after tonight's program, Kathy will find you there and continue the conversation. Dr. Gasim will talk for about 30 minutes or so. He's got an interesting presentation queued up. And then he's very eager for dialogue, so we'll have Q&A after that. Also, yeah, I guess that's about it. I think we've covered it all. Let me briefly introduce him to you, and then we'll get started. He's an associate professor of Middle East Studies and Political Science at Grand Valley State University. He earned a PhD from Texas Tech University, and he taught there as well as University of Wisconsin, University of Illinois, and Beloit College before coming to Grand Rapids. His research interests include comparative politics, Middle East politics, Islamic civilization, Islamic political parties, and Muslim Americans. He has contributed articles to many publications. Among them are Politics and Religion, the Journal of Political Science Education, the Journal of Islamic Perspective and Culture, and to the Oxford Encyclopedia of Islam and Politics. He also writes for Al Jazeera English, for the Arab Daily News, for the Huffington Post, and the Yemen Times. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Gamal Gasim. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight, this evening. And actually, I was expecting just to be with Michael and Eric. I was joking with him. I didn't really expect that great audience. Thank you so much for coming. I know this is Thanksgiving week. Before coming here, I really have these mixed feelings. I'm going to talk about tragedy in Yemen, even though I will walk you quickly through the history of Yemen. But at the same time, also, today is a very special day for Muslims. Today is the birthday of Prophet Muhammad, and Muslims celebrate that birthday across Islamic countries. Here in the West, unfortunately, we know little about Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad, but I would say, the most loved man actually on earth. And you will not find any Muslim family without someone named after him. My topic today will be about Yemen, basically from a model of democratic transition to a failed state. The series is titled Middle East Shifting Sands. We have some sands in Yemen, but mostly mountains. So Yemen is called in ancient time the Happy Arabia, and this is actually my province, Ib, the state of Ib in Yemen. I will walk you quickly through the history of Yemen. This is actually here Old Sana'a city, one of the oldest cities in the planet, actually. Founded, thousands of years ago. And this is during the rainy season. This is, the remnants of the Queen of Sheba, Bilqis, her palace. And this is also, the province of Ib. Yemen, the article I contributed to Oxford Encyclopedia on Islam and politics. In that article, I describe Yemen as Abrahamic religion. Yemen was once, a Jewish state. Basically, Judaism was the official religion of Yemen for a long time. This is maybe because of the marriage between Queen of Sheba, Bilqis, and King Solomon. And then embraced Christianity. So when Islam came, actually, the official religion of Yemen was Christianity. Prophet Muhammad sent one of his companions, Mu'az ibn Jabal, to call the entire people of Yemen to Islam. So because of the efforts of one person, Yemen embraced Islam. And so Yemen experienced the three Abrahamic religions. I think that's very rarely in the Middle East: Judaism, Christianity, and then Islam. Prophet Muhammad once called Yemenis as a people of faith. He said, Al-imanu Yamanin wal-hikmatu Yamaniya, meaning faith is Yemeni and wisdom is also Yemeni. You see Yemenis, generally they have that kind of, sense of wisdom. So in ancient, Yemen also has an ancient civilization. Yemeni civilization is, or was basically more humane in its orientation. During this actual ancient civilization, as I mentioned, the Queen of Sheba, it is on the Old Testament. Queen of Sheba was a queen of Yemen before Hillary Clinton lost Michigan in 2016. So Yemenis are used to this, to having queens, female as head of state. Before the Islamic era and after the Islamic era. After the Islamic era, Queen Arwa also was the queen of Yemen, for significant period of time. Yemeni civilization is more humane in its orientation, known of building, irrigation systems, dams, like Dam of Marib, unlike some of our friends in the region, we don't worship kings the way that others did. So in Yemen, you are not going to see pyramids, because pyramids, after all, built to glorify brutal dictators. Unfortunately, we go and pay them visit sometimes and enjoy that. So in Yemen, you see that it's about irrigation, dams, irrigation system. And that is still, functioning today. Also, if you love mocha coffee, Mocha also is named after an ancient seaport in Yemen. Okay, so in Yemen, you have the best coffee beans, actually. One of the biggest businessmen who sell actually coffee beans to Starbucks was Al-Amoudi of a Yemeni origin. He's a Saudi, also has a Saudi citizenship. One of these businessmen put under arrest by the Saudi crown prince for some time. So Mocha is named after an ancient seaport in Yemen. It still functions today in the Red Sea. So in Yemen, you see cultural diversity. And also Yemen, unfortunately, ranked number 2 in countries with the highest ratio of weapons per capita. You know which one is number 1? United States. So this is the only list that Yemen came second after the United States. And Yemenis don't have the second amendment rights, but it is natural in Yemen. So in Yemen, roughly between 60 million pieces of weapons. This is before the war, for roughly around 24 million people. Also here, you see the city here. This is Yemen has 3 cities preserved by UNESCO. This is one of them. This is called Manhattan Desert. This skyscraper is actually built of mud in the south. This house is lasted more than 300 years old, and older than that. It's called Shibam. there are 3 cities, Shibam, Zabid, and Sana'a, protected by UNESCO. Modern history of Yemen. Yemen was divided until May 1990. During the Cold War era, there are 3 countries that were divided. Korea, based because of the Cold War era, between North and South Korea, and Germany, West and North Germany, and Yemen, North and South Yemen. Yemen was the first one to be united, before even Germany. So on May 22nd, 1990. Before talking about unification in Yemen, it is very interesting. In Yemen, the sense of nationalism that Yemenis feel that they are Yemeni preceded the unification of the country. Usually, in political history of many countries, a country will be founded first, and then a sense of national identity will evolve, just like the United States. When the founding fathers met, and unified the 13 colonies, at that time, there was no really such an identity like American, identity. So, and then, the debate between the Confederate and the federal, system. So the identity of America and others evolved after the foundation of America as one country. In Yemen, the idea of Yemenis preceded that by centuries. But until 1990, in the modern history, Yemen was not united. The South was basically under direct British rule, and in some places like Aden, and others through came under indirect British control until 1976. The North Yemen was the first Arab country to gain independence from the Ottoman Empire in 1918. Actually, one of the nicknames of Yemen, besides being Happy Arabia, is that it is the graveyard of the Ottoman soldiers. So foreign soldiers go to Yemen, never come back. You can study Turkish music. There's a beautiful song, very sad song, about these Ottoman soldiers who go to Yemen and never made it back to their home country. So the North was independent. The North Yemen never been colonized by a Western power. Never. I mean, the British came to the south and colonized Aden. The Yemen remained relatively under the Ottoman control until 1918. But the North, from 1918 to 1962, was completely isolated. At that time, the Imam was concerned about European intervention. So he basically, if you are an European, you need to get a special permit to go to Yemen. Very few people made it to Yemen. This is why Yemen lagged behind in terms of modernity. And the North Yemen is still, the tradition is there. When you go to Sana'a, as if you are in a living museum, especially the old city. It is a true story. When I came here after 2 years, I was spoiled a little bit by being in America, so I received mail every day. And after 2 years from Kansas, I went to Texas Tech to do my PhD. There I met one of my classmates. He's Japanese for the first time. He came to the US just like 3 weeks. So one time we met in the area of our mailbox area in our apartments. And he asked me a very strange question. He said, how many times they deliver mail in America per day? And I said, once. But on Sunday, we don't have, service, And that shocked me, that question. I asked him how many times they deliver in his area in Japan. He came from an elite family later on, I came to know. He told me 3 times a day. Then he asked me how many times they deliver in Yemen. And I said, I tried to brag a little bit about my country, and I said 5 times. And he said, a day? I said, no, in your lifetime, if you are fortunate. So that's, So for me, modernity, actually, it is true. My grandmother died. She never, received, mail in her life that had been delivered to her home address. So that is the reason that goes back to especially in the North, the era of isolation. Yemen, they have a military coup, they call it a revolution, that overthrow the imamate of the North. The imamate in the north, it is a traditional religious authority based on the doctrine of Zaydism. Zaydism is a Shia school that basically in the middle between the Shia of Iran, the Twelvers, and the Sunni. They recognize the first Muslim caliphs. I don't go into details about Islamic political thought, but it is in the middle. So they rule Yemen mostly for about thousands of years. About 1,000 years, they rule North Yemen. So 1962, they overthrew, through a military coup backed by Egypt. At that time, Egypt was targeting Arab monarchies. You see a lot of military coups in 1960s in Iraq, in Syria, in Libya, in Sudan, in Yemen. And Nasser sent thousands, tens of thousands of Egyptian troops to support the revolution in the North Yemen. And Saudi Arabia backed the royal family. So the history of, I can talk about this later if you have questions about it. So Saudi Arabia, back in 1960s, the people look like the Houthis today, the Zaydism. So the war in Yemen is not really based on ideological differences, it's just interest. The South gained independence in 1967, and sooner came under the Yemeni Socialist Party. So from late 1960s until 1990, the South was under tight control by the Yemeni Socialist Party, where they tried to adopt socialism. And they built a big factory for vodka, where people can drink vodka as part of their experience of socialism. And it ruined, actually, the South, because Aden in the South used to be economically very prosperous city. In terms of its important international trade, it used to be more important than Singapore, than, of course, Dubai at that time didn't exist, only in 1970s. And the socialists actually, this tight control and national confiscation of businesses affected the city until today. There was conflict within the Yemen Socialist Party, especially in 1986. They split along tribal lines. It's not really that ideological. I have a friend of mine, he's older than me. One time he used to be a member in the Socialist Party. He did his PhD in America after US admitted, socialist, to study. And one time was everyone must be a member in the Socialist Party, everyone. And one time he said he was in a meeting, and they basically, one of them was smoking cigarette, one of the guys. They are not really highly educated. And he was in high school. He was the most highly educated person in that meeting. So these are soldiers studying socialism. So one of them, he said, you can't smoke in meetings. They said, no, you can't smoke. He said, Lenin, he replied back, Lenin said, you cannot smoke in meetings. Lenin, the founder of, And they asked my friend, is it true that Lenin said you cannot smoke in meetings? So that is their understanding of what? Of socialism, unfortunately. This is why it was a very bloody conflict in 1986. This is Aden. It was my late father's favorite city. It's a city of more than 600,000 people. A very beautiful city. It was the first city in the entire Arabian Peninsula to have, paved streets. Beautiful cities. It is really a melting pot with significant, immigrants, Indian, Somali, and it was a beautiful city. Unfortunately, was affected by many conflicts. In the north, since the revolution of 1962, the hope for modernization actually almost died. The only time it was so alive during this man, President Al-Hamdi, who had a white coup in 1974. This is the Hamdi here in the middle. He was loved by most of the Yemenis. But because of the effects of the Cold War, he was assassinated. He's just like Yemen's JFK. We don't know who really killed him. He was killed with his brother. It was really a brutal assassination. He didn't really have bodyguards like others. He was a very peaceful person, loved by most Yemenis. I wrote an article in Huffington Post about his assassination. Until he died, there was no formal committee investigated his assassination. Not even a book, not even a documentary movie about his assassination. He tried to modernize Yemen. We don't know really who killed him. People think that it was Saudi Arabia behind, his. They paid for it, but they did not pull the trigger. It were a gang of Yemeni military officers. I did a little research on that, and I look at sources, especially Western diplomatic sources, to find really who killed Al-Hamdi. He was assassinated in October 1977. This is Al-Hamdi here. He was assassinated in 1977. He was assassinated in the house of his vice president Al-Ghishmi. Because, they invited him and his brother, and they killed him, and they killed other two French models. This is Ali Abdullah Saleh at that time. He succeeded Al-Ghashmi. People think that he was behind the assassination. We are not sure about that. Al-Hamdi, it was a big political taboo to talk about his assassination, even in a lecture like this during the time of Ali Abdullah Saleh. Ali Abdullah Saleh, of course, was killed last year, actually less than 1 year. It will be December 4th, 2017. So these are the last three Yemeni presidents: killed 1977, killed 1978, and killed 2017. The Yemeni Ali Abdullah Saleh ruled Yemen for 33 years. He described his experience of ruling Yemen as dancing over the heads of snakes. Most of these snakes actually were his own making. Tawakkul Karman, the first Arab woman to win Nobel Prize for Peace as a result of her role in the 2011 uprising. There was a Gulf Initiative plan, basically brokered a peace between the president and the uprising, youth, activists, and forces. As a result, there was election of the current president, who is now currently visiting the United States, Hadi. Hadi was Saleh's vice president for 17 years, but he didn't have real power. He was a very weak, and he's still a very weak president. He was a consensus candidate for the opposition on Saleh. They thought he can manage, the transition period for 2 years, so he remained still now the president of Yemen. There was a national dialogue. This is why Yemen was hailed as a model for democratic transition, where everyone joined to discuss Yemen's future and to discuss, how to solve Yemen's chronic political problems. I was in Yemen at that time during the conclusion of this national dialogue. I didn't participate. I was just, following I was in a short summer visit. But during this dialogue, Saleh established an unholy alliance with the Houthis, his former enemies. Saleh promised Yemenis that he's going to teach the opposition a lesson, how to lead the opposition. Once he stepped down, he was granted immunity from future persecution. He used that immunity to undermine the entire democratic transition process. So it is very interesting, Saleh, how he shifted his alliances. And Houthis entered Sana'a on September 21st, 2015. Basically, that facilitated greatly by Saleh forces. So Saleh was one actually who helped them coming to the capital city to undermine, the both Yemeni uprising, forces. The Saudis was very concerned, not just with the rise of the Houthis, but the Iranian presence. The Houthis made huge mistakes by immediately opening to Iran and allowing direct flight from Tehran to Sana'a. 2 flights a day. That created huge concern for Saudi Arabia. At that time, the King Abdullah died, King Salman assumed power, and they launched war on March 26, 2015. Saleh tried to reach out to the Houthi, to Saudi Arabia, but at that time they burned all bridges with Saleh. Saleh was their man for more than 30 years. And finally, the Houthis, they had their own agenda in Yemen, and the political marriage between Saleh and the Houthis was basically a marriage of convenience, not of love. And finally, Saleh was assassinated in his own home on December 2017. You see here, this is during the Yemeni uprising. It says in rough translation, not really great translation, that means if we get rid of the regime, we're going to get rid of Al-Qaeda. Because unfortunately, what happened in Yemen after the war on terrorism, the war on terrorism undermined the sovereignty of the Yemeni government. This is starting with the drones by Bush, and then Obama increased that tremendously, more than Bush. And I think that affected, and Saleh used Al-Qaeda sometimes, as a bargaining chip sometimes, unfortunately. So the Houthis, the key political actors today in Yemen are the Houthis. The Houthis are named after their leader, Badruddin al-Houthi, who came from Saada. He's one of the descendants of the Prophet family. And they shifted the Zaydi ideology more closer to the Twelvers of Iran. So Zaydism used to be the ideology of North Yemen, but what the Houthis did, they basically moved this ideology closer to Iran. That upset many, even Zaydi scholars. Islah is the branch of the Muslim Brotherhood in Yemen, very organized, and now it is the leading force against the Houthis, actually, because of ideological differences between the two. They didn't fight the Houthis in the beginning, but then they helped Saudi Arabia, but they have serious problems with the United Arab Emirates. And this is one of the problems in Yemen. The Saudi-led coalition consists of Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates as the two big players. United Arab Emirates has its own agenda in South Yemen. And for them, until a few weeks ago, Islah is number one, maybe enemy in Yemen. There is also the secessionists in South Yemen. When the Houthis want to attack Aden, this is when Saudi Arabia intervened and had these air strikes in Aden. Now they are very strong, but they are fragmented. They didn't have a clear vision, about what they want. Really, they want to separate, but how? Saleh's own party divided into 3 or 2 factions, but still relatively important. And then the Yemeni Socialist Party, which was defeated in 1994 civil war, but is still important, even though it is weak. I don't know if I have much time here. Okay. Other small political actors, also the Nasrists, and others, and other like Salafi groups, they're still important in Yemen. The Saudi-led coalition, basically we have now more than 4 years of severe economic sanctions. You can see this is some of the destruction of the Saudi airstrikes in Yemen. Tens of thousands of human casualties. Some of them I know. They died as a result. And we have, one of the problems in Yemen now is the child soldiers. So I know 2 kids actually. One of them was killed, by the Houthis, and another fought for the Houthis. And we didn't know where he is now, whether he's still alive or dead. I feel so sorry for his father. He's my cousin. It is one of the worst humanitarian crises, sorry for the typo there, of our time. And epidemic diseases, lack of access to clean and fresh water. Sana'a will be the first capital city to run out of water. And these are the serious issues despite the rainfall, all this, because the government basically is doing nothing about solving these chronic economic problems. Continued power outage in cities and towns. They said Yemenis are the most now, the political joke is that they are the most romantic people actually on the planet, because if you flew over Yemen, you will see candles everywhere. So that is, that is a sad reality in Yemen. The government employees without salaries for almost 2 years. They give it from time to time, and now we have a huge devaluation of the local currency. I talked about the issue of child soldiers, and these are some of the problems, and also destruction of Yemen's already crumbling infrastructure, like the limited, web of highways that we have. They're not really highways connecting big cities, basically destroyed by the Saudi-led coalition. These are some of the images you see sometimes in many places in Yemen. Saudi Arabia, unfortunately, in Yemen doesn't have a strategy. It has a tragedy in Yemen. For Yemen, just from geopolitical perspective, Saudi Arabia always is concerned about strong, unified, democratic Yemen. They see strong, unified, democratic Yemen as a threat to their, security, in depth. Saudi Arabia was not concerned about the Iranian influence in Iraq after US invasion as much as it was concerned about the Iranian influence in Yemen for many, many reasons, geopolitical reasons, and also historical reasons. Iran, in my understanding, is the biggest problem actually in the equation, because without Iran backing Houthis, Yemen could have actually a more of a peaceful democratic transition. I agree with the last US administrations, starting with Bush, Obama, and even I think they weakened the position of their allies in the region, and the Iranian influence began to get bigger and bigger in Iraq, in Syria, and especially Obama's reaction to the Arab Spring. I think was very weak and didn't support the youth activists. Bush invasion of Iraq gave Iraq to the Iranian, and now we have this regional competition between Iran, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia. No peace with Houthis militia in power. Now these days they're talking about ceasefire to resume negotiations. There will be no peace in Yemen as far as the Houthis still control weapons and they still, control, these, cities. Gamal Khashoggi death. Last time, my colleague, Professor Abdullah Rih, talked about, this, answer some questions. I think it might have a reverse effect on the conflict. I think now with just President Trump a statement released today about Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, I think Saudi Arabia will, there is no really way for Saudi Arabia just to leave Yemen. I think Gamal Khashoggi effect will be Saudi Arabia will try to accelerate its process of, eliminating Houthis, especially from Hodeidah, the main seaport that is a lifeline of the Houthis, military support. I know Americans, when I attend lectures like this, always think, what can we do? And before this, I will show you a video. I didn't really want to talk about statistics and data of the conflict, but I will show you just a video, a short video here. Can I get some help? In Allendale, we don't have really, equipments like this. I think they're spoiled here in the Sydney. Okay, sorry. Okay, good. No? Okay. You can just see the images here. I just want to see some of the images here of children. One of them is like a child just. Most of the hospitals, by the way, are run by international organizations. I have a sister who is a deputy director of a top international organization there. I'm not going to name it just to protect, this for the safety of my younger sister. But here, the situation is really, really beyond being sad, So if you are thinking about doing something about this, you can donate. This is one of my favorite international organizations, Doctors Without Borders. They're doing a really great job. They don't accept money from any donors who have interest in the conflict. But I think with the small donations from people of Michigan, I think they can accept. And also, the third thing that during this crisis, when Yemen needs help, we have the doors of America were basically shut down, against Yemeni students, Yemeni patients, I think writing a letter to lift the travel ban on Yemeni citizens, I think will be also something that you can do, because some of these Yemeni citizens here support many, many families. With that, we'll stop, and I look for your questions. And thank you. Thank you for being a great audience.
One's ready.
How you doing, Professor Jamal?
You can say
okay.
that. Yeah,
Sorry
no
about
problem.
that.
I don't wanna make it,
So you answered a lot of the questions I had on how
Great.
the U.S. had current ties to the current crisis happening in Yemen. I was just wondering if you knew of any bipartisan policies the U.S. is trying to develop between Iran, Saudi, as well as Yemen. Thank you.
Sorry, the last, sorry?
So I was wondering if you had any current things that the U.S. is developing for bipartisanships with Yemen, Saudi, and
You mean
as well.
Republicans and Democrats here? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think they work on any single issue together, right? Do they? No, no. I think U.S. policies in general, U.S. policies towards Yemen is that they take the Saudi lead. Whatever Saudi wanted in Yemen, whether in U.S. you have a Democratic or Republican administration, they always allow Saudi Arabia. Because Saudi Arabia have almost a doctrine in Yemen like Monroe's doctrine here towards South America. So since FDR met the founder of modern Saudi Arabia, King Abdulaziz, on the sea, they agreed that oil for protection. And there is no country that is more important for the national security of Saudi Arabia than Yemen. So this happened in 1978, limited war. Even Saleh, when Saleh came to power, the Saudi asked Americans to accept him. Saleh rise to power, the last dictator, facilitated by the Saudis. And they supported him. So this is why with the death of Khashoggi, people think that now maybe the United States will change its mind about the war in Yemen. Yes, we have one of the worst humanitarian crises on the planet, but I doubt that, especially under Trump administration, that U.S. will exert any of its own leverage, towards Saudi Arabia to stop the war. I doubt that. I don't know if I answered the question or not. Okay.
You mentioned that Yemen is second in the world in weapons per capita, and I wondered if you had any research or had done or have any information on whether that played any kind of role in the conflict that's happening now.
I see this from a different perspective. Maybe the National Rifle Association will love my answer. I see that as a positive because it stopped Yemen from becoming another Iraq like under Saddam Hussein or another Syria under Assad. I think weapons in the hands of people made or forced dictators to behave a little bit more rational. So even with the Houthis, when the Houthis control now, basically those who stood against the Houthis are the tribes of Marib and the civilians, So that is the positive part of it. Otherwise Yemen will be another Libya, another Syria, another Iraq. Even with today, even though maybe Yemen is not safe for people like me, with people who write in media, but still there is what I call sometimes Yemen exceptionalism. Like now, for example, you can take a bus from Sana'a to Aden, pass through the Houthi checkpoints, and then you leave that to the government of Hadi's checkpoints. The same bus, because there are certain norms. Because I think modernization, the way that was adopted in Iraq and Syria with the brutality of modern state, taking arms from people, I think that has a negative effect in terms of people's rights. I don't know if I answered the question or not. So Yemeni tribesmen are truly free, because even police force in Yemen behave differently than other Arab states. Because you're a tribesman, when you have a weapon, another has a weapon, you tend to have that mutual respect. And one time the government, in 2000, I think, wanted to disarm people, and one of the religious clerks actually was quoting the U.S. Constitution, that in America, the Constitution protected people's what? Arms, and weapons. And he might be anti-American, policy in the region, but he loves the Second Amendment. Okay.
More questions?
Is North Yemen still as isolated as it once was? Are they protected from the conflict because of their isolation?
That isolation ended in 1962. That complete isolation, Actually, even the old city used to have gates. In the evening, they close these gates, So that isolation ended in 1962. So this war that we see is everywhere in the country? The war, not like Sana'a. Sana'a now they have airstrikes, but relatively peaceful, actually. Actually more peaceful than Aden, maybe. Okay? So, no, in certain areas, not like, but still, the impact of the war is felt everywhere. Makes sense?
What was Salah's relationship to the people? Did they support him?
There are people who really support him, yes. There are a few people who... Salih is was Machiavellian. Very pragmatic. Purely Machiavellian. And I think now his absence created a political vacuum of power in Yemen, because he was very capable of building coalitions, disbanding coalitions. So now we didn't have a breakthrough, I think because of the absence of Salih. He could reach out to people like the Houthis, the current leader, who killed his own brother. He killed the former leader, but he still reached out to the Houthis and established this unholy alliance with them. He used to have a strong alliance with the Islah, and then got rid of them. He used them again as the Socialist Party. He joined the Socialists to form, to establish the One Yemen in 1990. And then he got rid of the Socialists. He used the Islah, and then he got rid of the Islah. Actually, some people argue that he was the one who helped facilitate the growth of the Houthi in order to encounter the Islah ideologically. Okay. So he was a very complicated man. Yes.
So you were mentioning that the way we can help, what we can do is donate to Doctors Without Borders or to connect with the White House. What is the role that the United States can play? You have already mentioned you don't think that they will do anything, but, just wishes, being wishes. What could the United States do that would help to cease this war, whether it's something in our relationship with Saudi Arabia? The other question I had, and I don't remember this, so forgive me, but do we have bases in Yemen?
No, U.S. military bases?
Yeah,
no.
we do not, correct?
No. There was a strong, maybe security personnel before the war, but U.S. Closed the embassy, and they left in the start of the war. For your first the first question about what U.S. can do, actually, I'm sorry but U.S. showed a very weak leadership since the last administrations, not just in the Middle East, but facing a lot of challenges in terms of security. I would consider this is my personal opinion, that the last great American president when it comes to foreign policy was Bush the senior. He handled two crises very intelligently: the collapse of the Soviet Union and the Saddam Hussein invasion of Kuwait. Clinton was weak, but was not really that terrible. There was no major crisis during his time except Rwanda, the genocide, and Bosnia and others. Bush, by invading Iraq, he created a huge problem. Instead of strengthening American position in the region, he weakened American position in the region. The invasion in Iraq was a big mistake in terms of serving U.S. interests there. The invasion of Iraq, yes, 2003. Yes, Bush 43, George W. Bush. Obama, even though myself, maybe I had tears when he was elected, but we were so disappointed. Obama was very weak. He shifted U.S. strategic focus from the Middle East to the Pacific. Basically, he was more concerned about the rise of China and this. So that is his shift. But I think by quickly withdrawing from Iraq, I think maybe John McCain was right when he said we need to support democracy. We need to not recognize the military coup in Egypt. That was a big mistake, recognizing the military coup in Egypt, undermining the whole Arab Spring. So now almost Arab Spring is dead. But in my mind, the real revolution in the Middle East, because things cannot work this way in the Middle East. So now you have, with Iraq was completely destroyed after the invasion. After the Arab Spring, you have Syria, you have Libya, you have Yemen. All these countries are basically affected very negatively by the Arab Spring. I think the real revolution will come. Maybe, I don't know how long it will take, because all the conditions now in the Middle East are just, waiting for maybe a charismatic leader, maybe waiting for something big to happen, and that will not be like the peaceful sit-ins that we have seen during the Arab Spring. So Obama was very weak by not backing the forces for democracy in Egypt, in Yemen, in Syria, when he drew the red line, and that led international power like Russia to come in Syria, and led regional power like Iran and Turkey and Saudi Arabia to play a bigger role. So that American position is weakened. And now, of course, with America first is another huge problem. Especially targeting NATO and others. So I think the last three administrations, with the current one, I think they don't really realize the importance of American leadership in international security.
Thank you, Professor. I have, a couple of questions. One is, what was do you see a symbolic meaning when they declared the war from Washington by the Saudi ambassador to USA at that time, rather than from Saudi Arabia itself? That's one question. The other question is, since the alliance of war against Yemen or against Houthis has taken control of some of part of South Yemen, and most of the Yemen now is under the control of these forces, why still you hear about more crimes, loss of order and control in these areas compared to those areas that are controlled by Houthis? And third, what's your comments about the presence of Al-Qaeda ISIS and their allies in these areas? I mean, who allow them? We know that if United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and their alliance are against these groups, why they are there? They are well established there. They are nested in several areas compared to the Houthi areas.
Okay. I will try to remember the question. So the first one about the declaration of the war, if I'm not mistaken, it was declared President Hadi when he fled to Aden. He was under house arrest in Sana'a. When he fled to Aden, Saleh at that time was with the Houthi Saleh alliance. They began to bombard, his residence in Aden. He invited, this is how it looked, invited Saudi coalition to intervene. So the Saudi basically, officially, whether we agree with this, was basically joined the war because of the formal invitation by the current president of Yemen, Abdurrabbu Hadi. About the relative stability of the Houthis. Houthis, they have a long history. I mean, they inherited these traditions of the imamates. So they have the Sayyids families in many places. And they have also experts, I would say from Hezbollah and Iran. When I went to Yemen last time in the summer 2014, actually I wrote an article predicting that the Houthis are going to enter and going to have a military coup in Yemen. And when I went there, just from my personal observation, I saw the level of sophistication of how they organize events in North Yemen, in Sana'a, and how they mobilize people. I studied political mobilization and campaigning, and these are not just average people, average tribesmen. I know they came from the north, from Sa'da. Most of them did not receive formal education, like high formal education. So, plus their history, the legacies of how to control areas, the Sayyids, So they adopted very effective, strategy. Plus Saleh helped them. They use all the state resources that Saleh law has provided to them to undermine the whole, democratic transition. In the south, in Aden and others, because I think the Saudi Arabia doesn't have a clear strategy. United Arab Emirates is a problem in the south. United Arab Emirates, unfortunately, they have their own national interests. They claim that, they have that in the south. They really work hard to separate the south from the north. We know from history that Saudi Arabia and Emirates, they don't like a unified Yemen. But Saudi Arabia, just like when Colin Powell told President Bush when he wanted to invade Iraq, he said, once you break it, you own it, right? So Saudi Arabia now cannot, if Saudi Arabia allow the separation of the South, all Yemenis are going to blame Saudi Arabia for that. Okay. So I think the problem in the South because of these different factions. The secessionists are not united. The Islah of the South, the interests of United Arab Emirates, and I agree with you, in terms of relative security, the areas under the Houthis are more stable, but because they are very brutal. So if you oppose them, they will come and demolish your home, kidnap you or kidnap your kids. So they are using a very brutal tactics against their, opposition. If you don't oppose them, then maybe they will let you just, do your daily business. The third about the presence of Al-Qaeda. I think President Saleh to blame for, President Saleh, he used Al-Qaeda sometimes. There are some stories one day he basically introduced one of Al-Qaeda leader to his Minister of Defense. And the Minister of Defense didn't know this is Al-Qaeda leader who called for his own head. And after the meeting, after the guy left, he asked the President Saleh, he said, was this a guy who called for my head? They said, yeah, he was the guy. So Saleh used this in order to get support from the United States. At that time, after September 11, immediately Saleh flew to Washington and met with Bush and embraced the war on terror. And most leaders, I would say, they use the war on terror to suppress dissidents, to suppress opposition. And this is something is a missing piece in our study of terrorism. So is there Al-Qaeda elements in Yemen? Yes, there are. But usually, Al-Qaeda will grow in areas that in lawless areas. So yes, there is ideological difference between Al-Qaeda and the Houthis, but it will be a big mistake to think that Al-Houthis are capable of eliminating Al-Qaeda. They are not, because Al-Qaeda, that might embolden Al-Qaeda, and Al-Qaeda might be fighting maybe on behalf of the Sunnis in Yemen. So I believe building modern state institutions in Yemen and strengthening Yemen's official army, state army, will, in the long term, will defeat Al-Qaeda. Now, with the absence of Saleh, I have hope that Al-Qaeda will be defeated.
So you've mentioned a lot about the powerful players in Yemen involved in this war, but what does the war at kind of like a personal level or an everyday level, aside from the carnage it's wrought on people's lives, how else does it affect the people, or do the people in Yemen actually take sides or talk about or think about this war?
Yemenis are one of the very patient people I have seen. They can live very simple life, And also, there is a Yemen exceptionalism. Exceptionalism in the sense that, especially in the north, with these traditional values they have, where we don't have the atrocities that basically you see in Syria or in Libya. In Yemen, still tribal values, respect of women, and and also the free trade that Yemen had for centuries allow for the mobility of, despite these sanctions now. Some of my family members told me that, if you have money, you can buy anything in Sana'a. Even they do trade with Saudi Arabia. Even Saudi Arabia goods come to areas under Houthis control. Okay? And, so that's Yemen exceptionalism, where people know how to live, Actually, when Saudi Arabia air strikes, like bombard the Sana'a, people sometimes go to the top of the roof of their homes and with their cell phones, basically showing what, videotaping their strikes. They are, because they're not, they develop a mechanism to live. And also there was no strong presence of modern state in Yemen for a long time, okay? And Yemeni diaspora also play a big role in supporting their families back home. Like billions of dollars transferred every year to families, And also with the family, here in Yemen, we don't have, Yemen has almost like non-existent state social safety net. So what people have is a family safety net. So you have your cousins, your brothers you support, and you share whatever you have. I think that play a big role in easing the pain of the conflict. In the areas under the Houthis, there is no really that freedom of speech that used to be before. So if they know that you are outspoken against the war, they might come and arrest you. But still people manage. So I think now we don't really focus about the atrocities committed by the Houthis. I noticed in the Western media more of the focus basically on Saudi Arabia and the crimes committed by Saudi Arabia. But the Houthis committed a lot of crimes in Yemen, like not paying people salaries for years. Actually, the salaries came from the coalition, even in the areas under the Houthis' control. So it is difficult sometimes to explain the situation, But people are very optimistic. Hopefully, tomorrow will be better.
Thanks, Dr. Qasim, and I will save most of my discussion when we meet.
Do you agree with me? No, I'm just kidding.
We always disagree with each other. I will save my long debate with you next week, as usual. I have two quick questions. I wonder what's happening in Yemen in Arab Spring. Unlike other Arab countries, they completely refuse anything from the former regime. They call for at least big names to go away. How Yemenis buy it to accept the vice president of the dictator? So they dislike Ali Abdullah Saleh, why they accept his vice president to be the president. This really shocked me, and I really need to explain from you, unlike what happened in Tunisia or in Egypt or even in Iraq when they refuse all people who are around Saddam Hussein. The second one, no one can doubt the harshest enemy of Muslim Brotherhood in Middle East right now is United Arab Emirates. How Islah, which is part of the Yemeni branch of Muslim Brotherhood, get along with United Arab Emirates? Do you think they are just getting along and they are waiting the moment of fighting, like what happened between people who used to fight in Afghanistan and get back to Middle East in 80s? Those. Thank you.
Okay, for the first question, basically about President Hadi, Abdurrabbu Hadi, he used to be the vice president of Saleh from 1994 until 2011, basically like 17 years. He was a weak leader. He didn't show any political ambitions. This is why the reason why Saleh appointed him as his vice president. Saleh was preparing his son to succeed him, okay? And the opposition saw him as like someone who didn't really have huge interest in political power, someone who can manage, the transitional period of 2 years. Unfortunately, once he assumed power, he began to use Saleh tactics, dancing over the heads of the snakes. That is Saleh's strategy. But he didn't have the political skills of Saleh. That's why he easily, was put under house arrest but he even submitted his resignation, when the Houthis took over. The only problem is that when he submitted his resignation, is that the Houthis didn't allow the parliament to hold session to accept the resignation because they are afraid the parliament was under Saleh control. So if the parliament met when the president submitted his resignation, he was under house arrest, they were going to choose someone of Saleh men to become the president. So the Houthis immediately blocked the parliament building and didn't allow the parliament to meet. While this happening, Hadi managed to escape. He was very good, escaping from Sana'a to Aden and then from Aden to Oman. So he escaped to Aden and then he withdrew his resignation. At that time, after the Arab Spring, they want to be inclusive as much as possible. So to bring all political actors, even Saleh's own party. This is why they gave Saleh immunity, political immunity. And the hope that, this is why the United Nations Security Council met in Yemen to endorse the process of national dialogue. It was very peaceful. I was there when they were deliberating, even though I disagree with the federal system they were trying to adopt. I think will cost a lot of money. And the 6 regions that they divided Yemen into, I think is not going to work effectively because of the lack of economic resources. I think 2 regions or 3 regions would be more than enough. The second question was Islah, yes. The United Arab Emirates, during War of Yemen, we see Saudi Arabia move from this soft foreign policy to a very aggressive form of foreign policy, especially with the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The United Arab Emirates is doing the same thing under Mohammed bin Zayed, the Crown Prince also, Mohammed bin Zayed. I think in Yemen, they have strategic interests in Yemen. They wanted to separate Yemen from South Yemen from North Yemen in order they can control the south. Or they try to control one of Yemen's very special islands, Socotra, which really contains some of the endangered species, actually. Species you can only find in Socotra Island. There was a quick occupation of Socotra. The former prime minister opposed this movement. This is why he was removed. We have now a young, inexperienced prime minister. I don't think that he can stand against the United Arab Emirates. So the Islah members in the south were targeted. Even there was reports about United Arab Emirates using Western mercenaries to target the Islah members in the south. You know, the United Arab Emirates. This is why I said they didn't have clear strategy. You can see here contradicting goals between Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. And just last week, the leaders of the Islah met with the Crown Prince of United Arab Emirates. People saw that as maybe a new chapter. We are not sure how serious they are, especially after to lift the pressure put on the Saudi Crown Prince after the death of Khashoggi, because they know that the only political forces in Yemen that can stand against the Houthis is basically the Islah. So I don't know if I answered your question. Okay. Yes,
Yeah, so I just heard some reports yesterday on two things. One is the World Food Program director indicated that the people in risk of starvation is increased from 8 million to 12 million people, which argues for quick cessation of the conflict. I also think I heard a report that the Houthis said they might be open to a ceasefire yesterday. Is that correct? And do you take that seriously?
Yes, Yemen situation, humanitarian crisis gets worse every day. Every day, you know. I mean, it is very painful even for myself to talk about it, you know. Anyway, so that is true, and you feel people with you know, I talked to my sister, who is the deputy director of one of these international organizations, and the pain in the hospitals. These hospitals are run by international organization, you know. Some doctors just paid by international organization like $200, $300. That's a lot of money, and during this crisis, people without salaries, you know. And the Houthis really don't care, unfortunately. The Houthis don't care. They just want to rule Yemen. They think that it is a game of patience. So they're hoping that the crisis will worsen, and there will be more pressure on Saudi Arabia to hold aggression so they can control Yemen forever. You know, they are not serious about peace, the Houthis. I don't trust them. They are not. They're only, you know, the Abdel Malik, their leader, is like in his 30s. Most of them, they are very young. They are not experienced. They don't feel the pain of the people, you know. So I think it will be a big mistake for Saudi Arabia and others, you know, I'm not a big fan of wars. You know, I hope the conflict will end today. But at the same time, I don't trust the Houthis. I mean, I don't think that they're going to give up their weapons and withdraw from the capital city, or even Hodeidah. I think in the West here in general, we are not really, you know, they say death to America, death, you know, to Israel, this, and here they're not even in the list of terrorist organizations, because they use that for political domestic consumption only. They demolish homes, they destroy schools, even mosques, and I'm not sure that they're really serious about solving this problem peacefully, because you can't solve this problem by leaving them in power. You know, Yemen, unlike, you know, we used to have a very, I think, strong democratic transition from 1990 to 1993. You know, and now the Houthis targeted journalists, activists, even people like me might be in a great danger if I go back to Yemen.
Back here. Sorry again for another question.
No problem.
We talked a lot about the power of different factions in Yemen. Now, we do not hear much about Houthis. I mean, who are they? How much percentage they are in Yemen? What is their popularity? Now, why they have fought all these more than 10 years in the state? I mean, they are against the state. They're kind of rebellion areas. So why is that? This is one point that we need to elaborate more to understand what's going on in Yemen. I understand that, I mean, the Arab media, they try to minimize their number, minimize their popularity, minimize as if they are no support. Some of them, they'll say they are just a group of 50,000 people. So how popular are they? What is their grievances? I mean, why they are, uprising, why they are controlling Yemen? Is it true that, as you said, that because they are the army of, they are making use of the Saleh army, that they are controlling Yemen? I mean, if the army is not happy with them, the whole army, and they have no social base, they should have collapsed or melted away after 3 years, more than 3 years, almost 4 years now of war and siege on their areas, right? I mean, Iran may support them for a while. I mean, Iran no more there. I mean, no more support that comes directly between Tehran and Sana'a, as you said initially, because there is no fly from anywhere. It's only whatever the alliance allow to them will reach there in their area. That's mainly humanitarian. So what are the sources of their strength?
Okay, briefly, the history of the Houthis. Houthis started as a group called Al-Shabab al-Mu'min, the Believing Youth, in 1992. That is the era of Yemen became more open, democratic, adopting a democratic system. And by the big brother of the current leader, his name is Hussein Badruddin al-Houthi, who also happened to be a parliament member. Actually, the current leader used to be one of his bodyguards, And, at that time, Saleh facilitated their growth to encounter the ideology of Islah. This rounds of war in order to blackmail Saudi Arabia. So basically, whenever they were very close eliminating the Houthis, they will be ordered to stop fighting and accept ceasefire. There are like more than 5 rounds of civil wars. At one point, one of the military generals from the south, he was in a cave, basically cornering the leader, and he was afraid that the phone was ringing from Saleh to stop the fighting. Maybe he didn't pick the phone, according to some sources, and he killed the leader. Because, if he listened to orders, there will be what? Don't do anything to him. Don't kill him. So he killed Hussein al-Houthi. Then his brother began to gain support, and Saleh also helped him during the Arab Yemeni uprising in order to undermine the entire government that followed Yemeni uprising when Saleh stepped down. This is why Saleh immediately reached out to them. At that time, we didn't know there was a strong alliance between the two, because you will have a handful of Houthis members will surround a military camp, and the entire camp will surrender. I mean, that's impossible. So it is not a secret, that Saleh basically surrendered even military camps to the Houthi forces. That's why when he was targeted by the Houthis around the vicinity of his own house, nobody came to his rescue, because, he led that. So that is, how to explain their survival. They are not really doing anything in terms of providing any goods to the people, public goods. They are not running hospitals. They are not paying salaries. They are collecting taxes to finance the war. They are using some of the international aid for their own followers. So, I mean, they are not acting like, they have responsibility towards the people of Yemen. And they are not popular. People are just, when Saleh, before he died, before he was killed 2 days, just 1 day, sorry, before he was killed, he called people to, stand against the Houthis. He ended his alliance. Within hours, things changed in Yemen. But they were very quick to eliminate him. Because, if Saleh just survived 2 or 3 days, they will be gone. So, unfortunately, there is no now a strong national leader that way all people can rally behind. That is what is helping the Houthis. Yemenis in general, they are not really happy with the Saudi coalition. They know it's going to stop. But the Houthis to be in power, the history of the imamate and this, I think the Houthis have no future really to control Yemen forever. I think they have a lot of, even we see sometimes a split within the Houthis themselves. We can discuss this, some more. Someone, I think I hit.
You have one last question before we, yeah, one more.
You mentioned a couple times about the lack of education was an issue in some of these things. What is the education system in Yemen?
It is mostly formal education system, but Saleh began to modernize Yemen. Hamdi was the real modernizer, the one that I just talked about, sorry. This man is the real modernizer of Yemen. He came from a religious family. He began really to lay the foundation of modern Yemen. Once Saleh came, Saleh built the schools, yes, built army, but again, talking about armies in the Middle East, especially in Yemen, Iraq, Syria, and Libya, these are not really truly professional armies to defend countries. These are dictators' armies, controlled by the families of the dictators. That's why when the dictators are gone, these armies also are gone. Unlike Egypt, regardless whether you like Egypt or not, Egypt, and to some extent Sudan, they have really truly professional army. The dictators never control the army by his families. That is one of the differences between these countries. So Hamdi began really modernization of Yemen. Yes, we have formal education. The output is not that great. We have exceptions. Still people go to colleges and this. Nowadays, the Houthis appointed his own brother as the Minister of Education, someone with no academic credentials, to become the Minister of Education in order to change the, I have a nephew, actually, who asked, his mother, where is Uncle Gamal? Is he in Israel or America? And his mother said, Gamal is in America. He said, okay, then we should not say death to America. Because that is the indoctrination that is happening. They think that through changing curriculum and books and this, you are going to somehow have a different kind of educational outcomes. I think in general, the problem started with Saleh. He didn't really have serious efforts to modernize Yemen. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Are there elementary school?
Of course, yes. Yes, kids go to school. We even have American school there. I taught in the summer 2004 in a Middle East Studies College. My students were American students. I spent an entire semester discussing the politics of Yemen. My course was politics of Yemen. My students basically are American students. Yemenis are really wanting to study. Yemeni kids, they're really eager to learn, But unfortunately, and education is free, and half colleges basically are female students, So yes, things are changing, Tawakkul Karman, the first Arab woman to win Nobel Prize for peace, So you can see, many people speak English, especially in the big cities, not like, tens of thousands, but, with some accent like myself, So, but the education is formal. If you are saying, if you are referring to religious education, there is, but not that significant.
Let's thank Dr. Gasim for meeting us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Jamal. You can stay for a little bit if you've got some questions you want to pursue and talk with him some more. Thank you for attending. Appreciate that. Remember that Kathy will be leading a discussion group at the New Holland Brewery if you'd like to continue the conversation. Our next event is Thursday, December 6th at 6:30. That's at Grand Rapids Community College's Sneeden Hall, where we have a visiting professor from New Zealand talking about separatist movements. We've seen a number of these all over the world, and she'll have a case study on New Caledonia, which is in the South Pacific. That should be very interesting. And we have flyers on our Great Decisions program, which begins, of course, in February. Please take one of those and be with us for that series. Thank you again for attending.